can be reached.
Compromise can't be a dirty word. I think it's how we do it.
President Trump will give his address from the Oval Office at 9 p.m. Eastern.
Fox's Sean Lanchel. The partial shutdown of the federal government stretching into its 18th day on Tuesday. There's been an arrest in Friday night's triple murder at a bowling alley in Torrance, California.
Based on witnesses' statements, video, and other investigative tools, the Torrance Police Department was able to identify the suspect responsible for these murders shortly after the incident, and within about 30 hours, with the assistance of our SWAT team, the suspect was taken into custody in the city of Los Angeles.
Torrance Police Chief Eve Irvine, who says 47-year-old Reginald Wallace is a convicted felon. The shooting's culminating a brawl at the bowling lanes. The college football season ends in a blowout.
Justin Ross off and running. The Alabama native wins the foot race.
Call courtesy of ESPN. Trevor Lawrence finding Justin Ross there for one of his 3 touchdown passes as the ACC Rookie of the Year would go on to earn Offensive Player of the Game honors as Clemson destroys Alabama 44-16 to win the College Football Playoff National Championship Monday. Clemson winning their 3rd national title in program history and handing Alabama their worst loss under head coach Nick Saban.
Fox's Matt Napolitano. This is Fox News.
Introducing Exchanged, Guam's first online and mobile remittance to the Philippines. Exchanged is the easiest and fastest way to send money to your family and friends anywhere in the Philippines. Download the Exchanged app or visit their website, exchanged.me. Sign up, remit, and get a chance to win a trip for 2 to Manila. Deluxe accommodations at the Belmont Hotel at Resorts World Manila. So sign up and remit now at Exchanged. Promo ends March 2nd, 2019. Conditions apply. Also avail of Exchange dollar to remit promo. Visit exchange.me for details.
Docomo Pacific is making the Better Together bundle even better. 2 great services plus more. Get unlimited local calls, SMS, and 20 gigs of data, plus unlimited home internet for $109 a month. Sign up today and get free installation and choose between a free Galaxy S8, S8 Plus, or $100 off select devices. Mobile plus online from Docomo Pacific. Better together. Some conditions apply. See store for details.
The federal government is suing one of the states over its new workers' compensation laws.
In a legal battle between the 2 Washingtons, the federal government is suing the state to overturn a law that makes it much easier for workers at the most toxic radioactive waste site in the Western Hemisphere to collect on workers' compensation claims. Lonnie Rouse worked at the Hanford Nuclear Reservation for 18 years before numerous illnesses forced him to leave. He is convinced exposure to toxic chemicals caused his serious health problems. Rouse and dozens of other Hanford workers have been denied workers' comp claims because they couldn't prove the job caused the illnesses. But now, under a new state law, there is a presumption the Hanford job is to blame. The Fed sued, saying that's discrimination because it only applies to Hanford workers employed by the Department of Energy and its contractors. In Seattle, Dan Springer, Fox News.
Trade talks between the U.S. and China entering a second day. No word on progress. In fact, the official Chinese state newspaper, in its Tuesday editions, is warning Washington not to demand too much from Beijing in those talks. China's President Xi Jinping has welcomed North Korean leader Kim Jong-un to Beijing for 2 days of talks ahead of what's likely to be a second summit meeting between leader Kim and President Trump sometime in the next few months. A hearing scheduled Tuesday on a social media scam.
Prosecutors in Cleveland say Kirsten Laurie, Zeynep Spieth Maddox, and Kimberly St. John Stevenson ran a Facebook page that targeted new moms who combined to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on baby products, even Disney vacations, though products and trips that were never delivered. The 3 accused face multiple felonies, including conspiracy, theft, money laundering, and telecommunications fraud. All 3 have pled not guilty to charges. Jeff Manasso, Fox News.
In New York, I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Are you not getting paid what you're worth? Or not reaching your full potential at your job? If you're pioneering, adventurous, competitive, love talking to people, and want to earn $100,000 per year, sell cars on U.S. military bases with Military Auto Source. Start on Guam, stay on Guam, or move to Japan or Korea. To see if you qualify, visit MASEastasiarecruiting.com. Military Auto Source, helping you reach your full potential.
Here at APL, our core values give the company its heart and soul. Whether it's connecting your business with our global network through our newly enhanced service or investing our efforts into giving back to the community, APL is committed to serving you. We humbly honor the opportunity to find innovative solutions for you and your business. To learn more about our enhanced service, call 588-4651 or visit www.apl.com/Guam for more details.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. We start every day like that. Today I've got a reading from a website called Bearing Arms, a guy named Tom Knighton, and he extols the virtue of the state of Iowa as a state that's gun-friendly. And here's what Tom says. Iowa lawmakers look to continue gun rights expansion. While states like California, New York, Massachusetts, and New Jersey seem to be in a race to see who can restrict gun rights the most in the shortest period of time, we can at least rest easy knowing that some states are doing the exact opposite. One of those states is Iowa. The state's lawmakers have already expanded gun rights a fair bit over the years, but they're looking to do a whole lot more. Constitutional carry is the holy grail for gun rights advocates in many ways. Mostly because if there's any amount of what I call, quote, gun squish in lawmakers, they're not going to support carrying without a permit. It's like turning the lights on and seeing the cockroaches that hide. Constitutional carry turns the lights on anyone with gun control sympathies. In other words, to pass it, you have to have enough people who are staunch defenders of the Second Amendment in office. But even if Iowa passes such a measure, it doesn't mean that the fight is over. Anti-gunners won't stop until police are going door to door searching homes for any firearm. That said, any move towards constitutional carry is a good move, and I'm glad to see Iowa is looking at not just that idea, but a constitutional amendment protecting the right to keep and bear arms. That would be an amendment of the Iowa Constitution. On the amendment, the legislature has already passed the measure once. They have to pass it again so it can go before Iowa voters. All in all, Iowa is shaping up to give other pro-gun states a run for their money. It's too bad that this competition isn't real. Can you imagine how quickly states would roll back gun control so they could win? If it were Iowa, as you were, it would be a glorious thing to be sure, but it's not. If it were, Iowa would damn sure have a head start over a whole lot of states, which is a huge win for gun owners there, that's for sure. Well, on our local situation, of course, we don't have a constitution that we can amend. We could have. We've had the ability to enact our own state constitution here since the 70s. We've taken a crack at it a couple of times, and we've never been able to do it. An outstanding piece of legislation was introduced in the 28th Guam legislature, which would allow for what is referred to as the patriation of the Organic Act. In other words, the Organic Act, as we know it right now, would become the Constitution for Guam, but it could be amended locally. And the way that the bill in the 28th is set up, an amendment to the Constitution would have to pass two sequential legislatures and then go out to the people by way of referendum, which is a good way of going about it. You want it to be possible, but not something that would be swayed by the emotion of the moment. But if we could amend our own Constitution, then we could have a provision in our own Constitution that would be very much like the Second Amendment. When it comes to what the article I just read calls constitutional carry, we don't have it here. You have the right, at least a statutory right, to openly carry a firearm on Guam, but you must have a firearms ID in order to do it. And if you're out running around with a firearm and no firearms ID, I think it's a third-degree felony. So those of you who would like to see a broadening of gun rights here on Guam might think in terms of amending our local law to do away with the firearms ID. Might be a hard sell, it might be a hard uphill sell, but as a general principle, it's better to be on offense than it is on defense, especially when you're talking about dealing with the legislature. Well, that's the Second Amendment for today. From there, we go straight to that part of the program that causes the real Joe Cruz to play. Very good, Real Joe Cruz. You recognize that as the theme music from Meet the Press. And a couple days ago, I pointed out why our local version of Meet the Press, which I refer to as Zemi Ikotni, I went through chapter and verse pointing out why our local version is so superior to what you see on NBC with Chuck Todd. I don't think it's necessary to repeat that. However, if you have an overpowering desire to hear it again, I suppose I could be persuaded. So what we do here is we look at the editorials of the two papers, and I determine which of the two is better, and then I mark that editorial with my coveted blue pen, which I have left in my briefcase and will have to retrieve at the first break. Yesterday, I didn't give the coveted blue star to either one of the papers because they were, I thought, pulling their punches. And that's one thing we don't tolerate when we do Meet the Press. We don't tolerate a newspaper editorial that identifies an issue, boldly identifies an issue, and then tiptoes away from it. So today, the Daily News is talking about drugs and drug addiction. And here's the title: Our View, Focus on Recovery Rather than Incarceration to Tackle Drug Problem. During his inauguration speech Monday, Attorney General Levin Camacho said efforts to fight drugs on Guam have to go beyond incarcerating drug offenders and include strategies for battling the underlying problem of addiction. We know that Guam has a drug problem, Camacho said. Over 200 cases are filed in this building every year, talking about the courthouse, which does not include people committing crimes to support their drug habit. 1/3 approximately of our prison population is being held for nonviolent drug-related offenses. That represents a lot of families torn apart by drugs. Decades of using incarceration to fight addiction have yielded little success in this battle against drug abuse. As Camacho noted, the government of Guam spends $26 million a year keeping people locked up. And it's hard to argue that the system is working when 2 out of 3 prisoners released is likely to reoffend. When people are physically and psychologically dependent on chemical substances, the threat of prison won't motivate them to stop using drugs. Addicts have already lost their freedom. They often lose jobs, homes, families, and the will to live as well. During the campaign, this is a quote again from Camacho, during the campaign, I met many people who recognized their loved ones need help, but not if it meant putting them in jail, Camacho said. Prison time and criminal record become obstacles, making the road to recovery more difficult. And as Camacho noted, the current system doesn't make the community any safer. Quote, to be clear, there will be strict consequences for drug offenders. Our policies, however, must align with our problems, Camacho said. We cannot count on incarceration alone to solve our drug problem. In order to build safer communities for all families, we must ask ourselves how we can do a better job to address the root causes of drug-related crimes. Camacho's plan deserves the support of other elected officials and the community. I'm going to stop right now and read that sentence again. Camacho's plan deserves the support of other elected officials and the community. Now, I just read the editorial down to this point. Were you able to detect Camacho's plan, Real Joe Cruz?
Not really, sir.
No, I didn't see anything in there that looked like a plan. Perhaps an approach. I'll give him a credit maybe for an approach, but there's no plan there. So where's my blue pen here? That's kind of what I mean by pulling punches. Problem was identified, and then the editorial comes along with something like Camacho's plan deserves the support of other elected officials in the community. Fine, if he had a plan, maybe people would support it. He has called for partnerships that focus on rehabilitation, treatment, and reentry programs as additional tools for people who have made mistakes, served their time, and now want to get their lives back on track. Programs that focus on recovery rather than punishment would benefit families and the community. Well, I hear what you're saying, Daily News, but your editorial is not very convincing. If there were a plan and it were logically laid out, and it would appear to have some degree of success, it might get the coveted tall tales endorsement. Certainly something that would take it a long, long way towards public acceptance. But speaking frankly, kind of this do-gooder, let's help them approach. Maybe there's something there, maybe not. But once upon a time, when I was testifying at the legislature, I suggested that there are times when I feel like I'm from Missouri. Do you want to correct my pronunciation there?
It's Missouri, sir.
Missouri. I'm from Missouri. And do you happen to remember what the motto of Missouri is, Real Joe Cruz? Missouri is the show me state. So, you know, if you want to convince me, sometimes you kind of got to show me. And some really nice, gentle prose and an allusion to a non-existent plan does not get past my show me threshold. So that's the Daily News for today. And then we have the Post. And a little bit more hard-hitting, a little more edgy. Guam's signal to the world. Scammers can get off easily. The generosity of a plea agreement with the local attorney general's office means Nicola Marinelli walked away without having to serve an extra day in prison after he acknowledged guilt in connection with using skimming devices to steal debit or credit card information from Guam customers. Marinelli has served months in jail while awaiting the final outcome of his case. Well, actually, no, he's been serving several months in jail awaiting the beginning of his case. He's in pretrial detention, and the way it works, one who is arrested is brought before a magistrate within 48 hours. A magistrate determines whether that person must remain behind bars pending his trial, or can be released, and if he can be released, on what conditions. So Marinelli was in pre-trial detention awaiting the beginning of his trial, not the outcome of his case. He did enter into a plea bargain, which meant that he pled guilty and did not go to trial. We look to newspaper editorials for a degree of accuracy on these points. Marinelli was arrested in August 2018 and charged in the Superior Court. After he pleaded guilty Friday, the remainder of his 2-year sentence was, quote, suspended, which means he didn't have to go to prison, and the time he spent in jail while awaiting for a resolution of his case was deemed enough. It's called credit for time served. The amount of time that a person spends in pretrial detention is credited against his sentence if he goes to trial, found guilty, or if he pleads guilty. It's called credit for time served. 2 other changes: the use of scanning devices. A scanning device is a second-degree felony, and conspiracy to commit the use of a scanning device as a third-degree felony were dismissed. Judge Maria Senzon sentenced Marinelli to 2 years in prison, but granted him credit for time he served in jail since his August arrest and suspended the rest of his prison sentence in line with the plea agreement with the AG's office. Marinelli is expected to leave Ireland because he is presumed to have no local ties, and he will be barred from re-entering the United States. Immigration authorities have taken him into custody for deportation. Well, once again, he remains in the custody of the Director of Corrections because the Territory of Guam has an agreement with the Bureau of Prisons. That agreement holds that we will house their prisoners for a set amount per day. I don't remember how much the amount per day is. So since he is, in a sense, a federal prisoner pending deportation, he remains in the custody of the Director of Corrections in a DEPCOR facility somewhere until the what's that outfit called? The Immigration and Customs Enforcement Service sends him back to Italy, or they may even allow him to make what's called a voluntary departure. If they would take him to the airport, if he had a ticket, he gets on the plane and pays his own way home. Marinelli is expected to leave Ireland because he is presumed to have no local ties and will be barred from re-entering the United States. Immigration authorities have taken him into custody. He was a tourist who, on the day of his court hearing Friday, kissed his cross pennant, said he was sorry, that he has learned his lesson and will not be committing the crime again. In the indictment, he was reported to have been captured on surveillance camera installing devices to steal credit information at bank ATMs located in the Micronesian Mall and in a Subway restaurant in Agate. He told authorities he'd been recruited by someone with possible ties to organized crime in Italy, according to a magistrate's complaint. He arrived on Guam with 3 skimming devices. The fact that Guam was targeted all the way from Italy shows that international criminals aim to exploit Guam's potential vulnerabilities. Stealing card information and attempting to take other people's money generally leave a trail of victims, although in this case the bank assured fraudulent transactions would be covered. Doesn't matter. Still, the hassle it takes to replace cards and tighten our watch against potential financial criminals means it's time we've wasted that we can never get back. Not to mention, it's just not cool to allow people to steal money from the banks. It's not cool to allow people to steal money from anybody, even banks. This isn't a victimless crime. Guam's local court and the Attorney General's office could have used this chance to send a stern message to tourists and other international criminals who come here to try to victimize residents. Well, let's talk about what kind of message our criminal justice is sending. This is a good example. If this guy had not been from Italy, if he had been from Agate instead, would he have been given such a sweetheart deal? I kind of doubt it. I kind of doubt it. And then we look at how many people we have for whom sentences were commuted by the governor so they could be deported back to the FSM. What kind of message does that send? And along the same lines, Yvonne Elliman and her husband came out here carrying ice in their luggage and were busted at the airport. Now, is that the kind of tourism we want to encourage? Come to Guam and bring your ice along? So what kind of a message did we send there? Well, we let them out so they could go do a concert down at Agate, down at what's the name of the school in Agate, Real Joe Cruz?
Mount Carmel, sir?
Yeah, so they went, they were treated like heroes at Mount Carmel. They went down and did a concert, and then they showed up in court, and they were given another sweetheart deal. Well, you know, what you did was really not that cool, but we're going to put you on a special probation that you can serve in Hawaii, but you got to work with the folks back there. What kind of message does that send? And once again, if those people had been from Agate instead of from Hawaii, I don't think they'd gotten the same sweetheart deal. So, do we have two different ways of treating people that break the law? Those that are actually rooted, you know, kind of like Bank Pacific, that are actually rooted here in Guam. And then we have another system for those that we could deport back to the FSM or deport back to Italy or treat them like heroes at a band concert and then let them go and serve their probation in Hawaii. Talk about sending messages. You make a good point here, Guam Post, but you just don't quite go far enough with it. In my humble estimation, the message we should send is this: you bring drugs into Guam, and you're going to go to the pokey for as long as we can put you there. And when you finish your sentence, then you can get back on the plane. We're not going to hold your drugs for you. You get back on the plane, and we're going to encourage you to go home. And if you are someone that is not a United States citizen, we will not only encourage you to go home, we will turn you over to Immigration and Customs and Border Protection, and you will be deported back to your home. So don't, if you have any idea that you want to commit a crime here, or you want to bring drugs here, don't even think about doing it, because the price you pay will be too high. That's the message we should be sending, but we haven't been sending it, including right here in the Post, where he sent a postcard when really you should have sent a 5-pound package by FedEx if you really want to get the message out there. However, of the two editorials, I'm going to have to step off camera for a second. I forgot to unpack my colorful blue pencil today. My bad. So today, The coveted Blue Star goes to the Guam Post. Yeah, they're probably dancing in Marine Corps Drive down there in front of the Post in Tamuning, you know. Okay, so good timing there. We'll come back to the card right after I finish grooving on take 5.
John Gibson, digging up history. How the British royal family came to own the world's largest cut diamond and never paid a penny. That story after this. Are you tired of getting ripped off by Obamacare? Are you confused by the options? Did you know there are advisors who will help you at no cost ever? Call Amy Yarborough, a trusted health insurance broker licensed with many carriers in 22 states. Amy and her team will get you the best plan and save you time and money. Amy Yarborough. Call her at 817-914-5835. That's 817-914-5835. Amy's team at 817-914-5835. Back to my story. In 1905, the supervisor of a South African diamond mine stumbled upon a huge stone so big he thought it was mere glass. But it was, in fact, the world's largest uncut diamond, a monster weighing in at over 3,000 carats, or about 1.5 pounds. The most renowned diamond cutter of his day spent months studying the rock, even fainted from nerves before he made the first cut. He took over a month to cut it into 9 major stones and 100 smaller ones. One of those stones, called the Greater Star of Africa, adorns the royal scepter even today. It is the largest cut diamond in the world at 530 carats. All of it a gift to the King of England from the colony of South Africa. I'm John Gibson, digging up history.
Chili's 3 for Me menu just got bigger. We're giving you more choices for the same great price. For just $15, you can get a beverage, salad, and an entree. First, choose from a refreshing Coca-Cola, iced tea, or Heineken on draft. Then enjoy a house salad and select your choice of a mouth-watering entree, like our half-rack ribs, Cajun chicken pasta, old-timer burger, personal chicken fajitas, or the flavorful margarita flatbread. So hurry in today and enjoy our Chili's 3 for Me menu for just $15. Available for a limited time. Chili's, more life happens here.
Now, more Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie. Spitting truth like watermelon seeds at a summer picnic. Call now, 888-TALK, 888-8255.
Yeah, that's the number. And by the way, all of you out there in our international Facebook audience, if you had an overpowering desire to go up there and click on that arrow next to where it says share, and share this post and share this Facebook Live with your friends and neighbors, I think it'd be a really good idea, and I would strongly encourage it. Okay, so the next item, the first item on the card here is our law lecture. As I point out every day, we spend a little time talking about Guam law here, about the law in the United States, the Constitution, etc. And I just thought it would be helpful if we spent some time talking about the law in some of the states. So yesterday we were talking about the Norths, North Carolina and North Dakota. So today we start with the O's, places like Ohio, Oklahoma, Oregon, Pennsylvania. So in Ohio, Cleveland, Ohio, women are forbidden from wearing patent leather shoes. Real Joe, do you know what patent leather shoes are?
No, sir, I'm not quite sure.
Okay, patent leather shoes are sort of like the shoes that the military guys wear now, made out of something called Corfam.
Oh, okay.
They're shiny. You don't shine them. They just are. They have an inherent shine.
Yeah, I'm aware of. I've seen those. My grandfather used to wear them.
Yeah. So there was a time when you would never catch men wearing anything that looked like patent leather shoes, but they were very popular for females because they were dressy. So in Ohio, in Cleveland, Ohio, women are forbidden from wearing patent leather shoes. lest men see reflections of their underwear. Yeah. That's Ohio for you. Yeah. In Columbus, Ohio, it's illegal for stores to sell cornflakes on Sunday. In Oxford, Ohio, it's illegal for a woman to disrobe in front of a man's picture. Boy, they take this morality thing pretty far in Ohio, don't they? In Youngstown, Ohio, it's illegal to run out of gas. Okay. And Catch-22 is banned in Strongsville, Ohio. The movie Catch-22, can't show it in Strongsville. Okay, so let's go from there to Oklahoma. In Oklahoma, people who make, quote, ugly faces at dogs may be fined or jailed. So if you want to make an ugly face, maybe it's the Oklahoma equivalent of what we refer to as the Aten Baba on Guam, huh? So if you ever go to Oklahoma, don't even think about giving a dog the Aten Baba, no matter what he does. Or she does, or excuse me, don't ever think about giving a dog an Aten Baba no matter what they do. In Shelter, Oklahoma, it's illegal for a woman to gamble in the nude, in lingerie, or wearing a towel. I didn't know Oklahoma had any gambling at all, but I guess if you are properly dressed, it's okay. Okay, so tomorrow we'll go to Oregon and Pennsylvania. Now, I have a really, really light card today because, as you know, the news drives the card because the news reports on who's fighting with whom or who is suing whom or who is taking issue with whoever, etc. Well, for the last day, the front page of the Daily News and the Guam Post look more like the entertainment page than the front page of a newspaper. There wasn't much news there. There were, a lot of really interesting pictures, and the reports were not exactly what I would call hard-edged. I guess by now I don't need to be told that Lulian Guerrero is the first female governor of Guam. And I think I've kind of got it that Josh Tenoro is the first openly homosexual lieutenant governor, I guess anywhere in the U.S. And somehow, if they can do a good job in their positions, I'll be very happy. The fact that one is a female and the other is an openly homosexual doesn't exactly cause me to be overjoyed. I'm still back to my Missouri mode, Real Joe Cruz. They're going to have to show me. And then, of course, as Jose Martinez points out, if we're going to get into superlatives, we ought to give Governor Leon Guerrero her due. She is the first openly pro-abortion governor of Guam that we've ever had. So, okay, the first item on the card here is where I wound up yesterday. It's called Moylan versus the cigar. I didn't really have much time to get into it yesterday, but I did explain to the Real Joe Cruz that the phrase close but no cigar comes from those devices at amusement parks where you give the concessionaire, it's probably $1 now, and he gives you a heavy mallet, and you swing that mallet down on a lever, and the lever propels this metal puck up a rail, and if you hit the lever hard enough, that metal puck will hit the bell. Ding! And if the bell rings, then the concessionaire will award you a cigar. So someone who tries really hard to do something but falls short, the saying is, well, close, but no cigar. Now you know, right, Real Joe Cruz?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah, and the same with, the word close. Ordinarily, close doesn't count, right? Close only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades, but not when it comes to ringing the bell. Okay, so here's something from yesterday's paper. Freshman Senator James Moylan didn't waste any time as he introduced on his first day 3 bills, 2 of which seek to roll back the business privilege tax from 5 to 4% and to reduce the liquid fuel tax by 4 cents a gallon. I thought that's great. That is really good. It's the kind of thing that I would expect a Republican to do. I've seen enough of the incumbent Republicans to not be disappointed when they don't do stuff like that, because I don't think it ever occurred to the 4 incumbent Republicans that their job is to get the majority. Because if you are in the majority, your term in the legislature can actually have meaning. You will be the chair of a committee. You will control the destiny of some of the legislation. You will have a chance to get your own legislation passed. If you're in the minority, no, you're probably not. You're probably going to spend a couple of years, spend an awful lot of your time waiting to see what it is that the majority wants to do. It's kind of a waiting game, so to speak. So when Moylan came along and the first day out introduced real Republican legislation, rolling back a tax increase, a tax increase, rolling back a tax increase inflicted upon the people by a Democrat legislature, I thought, yes. And I'm thinking, so he introduced it on the very first day, and on the second day of the legislature, what I hope to see is him out in front of the legislature with a great big pan and a spoon, banging that pan with a spoon, saying, I want a public hearing on my bill. And to push that bill and to, in a sense, make the Democrats uncomfortable, make them defend the higher tax rate. So if they don't give him a public hearing right away, well, there you go. See, you guys are, once again, the party of tax and spend. And if they do give him a public hearing right away, then that gives him the forum to explain why he introduced the bill and who he sees his constituency as. Because if you're rolling back the gross receipts tax, your natural constituency would be what is often referred to as, quote, the little guy, right? Not the guy who lives down there in Millionaires Row between the hospital and the Archbishop Flores statue. The gross receipts tax is a regressive tax, so there would have been a lot for Jim Moylan to talk about had he, because he introduced that bill. It was a perfect thing for a new senator to do to get off to a good start and perhaps provide some leadership for the other 4 who don't seem to understand what being in the minority is all about unless they're so comfortable there that they just as soon stay there. You don't have any responsibility. You get to go to all the cookie-pushing events, etc. So I thought, that's great. And then I read this sentence in the news story. Moylan's bills, if enacted into law, would reduce the taxes to their previous levels effective October 1, 2019. Wow. Talking about snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. A great idea. And it's better than introducing a bill to raise taxes, but the folks that are affected by that tax are affected by it every day. You know, the folks that spend the more of your income you spend, obviously, the more you pay in gross receipts tax. So if you're a person that lives payday to payday and spend all your money every payday, then you're paying 5%. Basically, it's like a 5% income tax. 5% of what you spend goes to taxation instead of what it is that you want to buy. So they're looking for relief right now to say, well, yeah, I'm really going to help you out. The only thing is that you're going to have to wait until next October, and then maybe it'll kick in. And then, of course, what arguments does Jim Moylan advance for the necessity of having his public hearing right away? He might as well wait until July to have the public hearing, because even if the public hearing is held and even if the bill passes, it's not going to be effective until the 1st of October. Wow. So I expect high degrees of dissatisfaction from Democrats, and I've been conditioned since the 21st of November 2014, the day of the great salary smash and grab, when then acting Governor Ray Tenorio and the Juan Pat 10 jacked their salaries up by about $25,000 a year and made it retroactive back to the beginning of the term. You know, the old saying is, I didn't leave the Republican Party. The Republican Party left me at that time. That was so un-Republican and so rotten that it would be very difficult for anyone to say, yes, I am a proud Republican after that. So I was conditioned to not expect a whole lot from the Republicans. Well, of course, you know that because of the great salary smash and grab, 7 senators lost their seats in what I would call a turn the rascals out wave. Old American political expression, turn the rascals out. And usually the rascals are members of the party that you're not a part of. But anyhow, okay, so I'm going to come back to, I'm going to beat up on Jim Moylan a little bit more before we have that big halftime show that we all look forward to every day.
Welcome to Subway's ad for the new Chipotle cheesesteak sandwich. How would you like it?
I would like it to predict my future.
My pleasure.
I see your future. A delicious moment in the new Chipotle cheesesteak sandwich with steak, jalapeno peppers, and Chipotle Southwest sauce. Wait, I foresee an imminent spell that is going to entice you. It's the crunchy bread with sunflower seeds, which provides an enchanting flavor. Don't miss it, and be mindful. The portal of the Chipotle cheesesteak sandwich is open for a limited time only. Subway, make it what you want.
Family Finance has been serving the people of Guam since 1959, and they'll continue to be there for you in the years to come. Whether you're looking to get a personal loan for that summer vacation or paying off those long overdue bills, Family Finance has got you covered. Apply for a personal loan from $1,000 up to $3,500 by calling Family Finance in Hagåtña at 475-4545, Upper Tuon 647-5626, or in Dededo 633-4473. Family Finance has been serving the people of Guam since 1959.
So, and I read the release here. I read this news story. He said Moylan said last year's business privilege taxes created an inevitable impact on the operational expenses of businesses, which he said unfortunately has resulted in higher prices of goods and services. Yeah. Because the business privilege tax is a regressive tax, he said the increase further impacts both the working class and small business. Well, then maybe what you could have done, Jim, was you could have repealed that tax increase right away. So, Tom, I know you're no fan of tax increases, so what can you tell me about this?
No, you're right. I'm not a fan of tax increases. I'm a former Republican representative from the states myself.
Okay. So,
hey, Bob, are we on air?
We are on air.
Okay. I'm new to the island. I've only been here a little less than 6 years, but I wonder if Josh was openly homosexual before he was elected. Did everybody know that, or just the people who knew him?
I think so, but I really don't know. And beyond that, Tom, I don't know that I'm even that much interested. So, do you think that what's your point, Tom?
My only point was I only learned about it after the election.
I see.
But I wouldn't have been likely to vote for that side of the ticket anyway. So I just was curious.
Yeah. Well, I guess
I don't know anybody. I just wondered.
I understand. You know, when I, at the beginning of the program, I mentioned that I think I've kind of got it through my head now that Lilian Guerrero is the first female governor and that Josh Tenorio is the first openly homosexual lieutenant governor. I just wish that we could stop talking about it. And I don't know why that should be a matter of particular interest when what we're interested in is people's ability to do the job they were elected for. But anyhow, I understand.
Well, I agree with you, and I'll quit talking about it. But you mentioned it earlier in the program, and it just got me wondering if it was well known. I didn't know. But
okay, you thought maybe it was a stealth operation, huh?
I wondered.
Yeah, I don't think it was.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think it was, Tom. So,
hey, I'm learning a lot about Guam from your show. Thanks. Keep up the good work.
Okay, so you've been here for 6 years, huh?
Almost. In May, it'll be 6 years.
Yeah, well, I think probably the best way to really get up to speed on who's doing what to whom here on Guam is to listen to Tall Tales, Tom.
I'm doing it. I'm working on it.
Okay.
Is there certificates available when I accomplish any learning?
Well, we are in the process of developing the Tall Tales Nation passport.
Well, I apply.
Okay. Well, we'll put your application in the stack, Tom.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks for calling, Tom.
You're welcome.
Okay. So another Tom. Well, we're up to 3 Toms now, right? Yeah. Okay. So back to Jim Moylan's bill here. I read in a different story that the reason that he made it applicable on 1 October of 19 was because, well, you know, the current budget already depends on that higher gross receipts tax rate. Well, to me, that if I had Jim Moylan sitting here, I would ask Jim Moylan, which of the two is more important to you, Jim? Taking care of the people that are stuck with that regressive tax increase, or making it easy for the paper shufflers down at BBMR, and especially in the face of appointing a passel of deputy directors and reviving an agency that was put out of business in 2011. I could tell you, obviously, you could tell which one of those two would be the more important for me. So, in addition to everything else, Jim Moylan adds what's called a severability clause to his bill. And from time to time, I get on that soapbox. A severability clause says something like if any provision of this bill is invalid because of constitutional problems, the rest of it stands. Well, which part of your bill would you like to have stricken, Jim, and allow the rest of it to stand? Don't you want the whole bill to stand? Or did you just put the severability clause in there because you've read a lot of other bills and everybody else does it? It's as useless an expenditure of printer's ink as putting an effective date in a bill. I see bills coming out of the legislature that say this bill shall be effective upon enactment. Well, that's the way it is. Unless you have a different effective date, that's when the bill is effective. And severability clauses generally have almost no, are almost completely useless. There would be an occasional time when they'd be used, but they oftentimes could work against the intent of the bill. So, Jim Moylan, I had high hopes for you. It's only the second day of your first term. Maybe you can recover, but if I were able to whisper in your ear, I'd say be a Republican, and be a Republican who wants to see a Republican majority in the legislature, and then conform your activities to that, and I think you'll probably be okay. So, so much for Jim Moylan's rolling back the GRT. I'm going to pick up on something I talked about yesterday, and that's Lou Leon Guerrero's being an agent of change. And then I've got the reorganization note that maybe Lou ought to take a look at this and start cranking out some herself. This is Reorganization Advisory number 6. It's dated October 6, 2011. And it's over the signature of Governor Eddie Calvo. And it says, I approve the reorganization of cultural and training resources and services today. Effective immediately, the Hagatna Restoration and Development Authority, Guam Council on Arts and Humanities Agency, Public Library System, Guam Educational Telecommunications Corporation will be merged into the Department of Chamorro Affairs. Joseph Cameron is the president of the Department of Chamorro Affairs. This reorganization will begin the process of identifying redundancies and eliminating them, consolidating functions and services for better and faster service, consolidating resources and breaking down bureaucratic barriers, eliminating duplicated costs such as rent, utilities, travel, and training, revamping the library system so it meets the demands of the community and thus increases education capacity and literacy. 6, pulling together learning resources outside the Department of Education, Guam Community College, and University of Guam so these learning resources can be better managed and partnered with DOE, GCC, and UOG. Focusing and synthesizing Chamorro language education, increasing the use of multimedia technology. Paragraph. This is just the first phase of the process for this agency. I'm going to come back to this after that big halftime show that we've all been waiting for so patiently. You know, the cheerleaders, the marching bands, the drill teams, the synchronized card section up in the grandstand, and then I'll pick up with this right after that.
KUSG, Hagatna, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Taking it right to the public, I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. President Trump will address the nation from the Oval Office Tuesday night, tweeting that he wants to speak about the humanitarian and national security crisis on the southern border. Talks with congressional Democrats about funding a border wall stuck in neutral.
The vice president saying that the day after Christmas, the White House made what he called a good faith offer to Democrats to say, listen, we'll take $2.5 billion for the wall as part of a border security package. The vice president saying Democrats wouldn't even entertain the idea. And in talks over the weekend, the vice president and the secretary of Homeland Security saying that the Democrats won't even budge on border security until the government is reopened. So they are clearly at an impasse.
Fox's John Roberts at the White House, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer and Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi asking the networks for equal time to respond to the president's address. The president plans to travel to the southern border on Thursday as he ponders declaring a national emergency.
What he has said about that is that he is considering it. He has never committed to it. White House counsel's office is researching the legal implications of it.
Special counselor to the president, Kellyanne Conway, speaking on Fox's The Ingram Angle. The House reconvenes on Tuesday. Democrats will introduce a bill to mandate a federal background check for every firearm purchase.
Gabby Giffords will join House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and California Congressman Mike Thompson, who heads up a Democratic task force on gun violence, in introducing the bill, which they say will have bipartisan support. The proposal would require federal background checks on all gun sales, including private transactions. Gun control groups estimate that roughly 20% or more of gun sales don't include background checks. Even if it passes the House, Senate Republicans will unlikely take action on the bill.
Fox's John Decker. This is Fox News.
Are you not getting paid what you're worth? Or not reaching your full potential at your job? If you're pioneering, adventurous, competitive, love talking to people, and want to earn $100,000 per year, sell cars on U.S. military bases with Military Auto Source. Start on Guam, stay on Guam, or move to Japan or Korea. To see if you qualify, visit MASEastAsiaRecruiting.com. Military Auto Source, helping you reach your full potential.
Family Finance has been serving the people of Guam since 1959, and they'll continue to be there for you in the years to come. Whether you're looking to get a personal loan for that summer vacation or paying off those long overdue bills, Family Finance has got you covered. Apply for a personal loan from $1,000 up to $3,500 by calling Family Finance in Hagåtña at 475-4545, Upper Tuon 647-5626, or in Dedito 633-4473. Family Finance has been serving the people of Guam since 1959.
Opinion.
South Korean leader Kim Jong-un has arrived in Beijing for 4 days of summit meetings with China's President Xi. Trade talks between the U.S. and China are wrapping up their second day. No word on any progress to roll back tariffs or trade tensions. Another American hero from World War II has died.
We are heroes of the night, they sang. The first to break the color barrier, the now legendary Tuskegee Airmen. One of the last of the heroes has passed. John Lyle, at his home on Chicago's South Side, 98 years old, with prostate cancer. Lyle named his World War II plane after his then-wife Natalie and was credited with downing a German Messerschmitt. The first black fighter squadron overcame prejudice with prowess. More than 200 combat missions, never lost a bomber to enemy fire, an unmatched achievement. Lyle went on to work for Chicago's Parks Department instead of skimming trees, trimming trees. In 2007, President George W. Bush honored the squadron with a Congressional Gold Medal. Therese Crowley, Fox News.
In Kalamazoo, just as his trial was about to begin, a former Uber driver admits in court that he shot 6 people to death in between picking up riders nearly 3 years ago. Jason Dalton faces life in prison with no chance for parole. College football has crowned its new champion.
Clemson on top of the college football world.
And Clemson runs out on the field and celebrates. They come to California and strike gold.
Audio courtesy of the Clemson Tigers radio network. Clemson handing Alabama their largest loss in the Nick Saban era on the national stage. Tigers clobber the Crimson Tide 44-16 to earn their 3rd national championship win in program history and 2nd in 3 years. Clemson freshman QB Trevor Lawrence earning Offensive Player of the Game honors after throwing 3 touchdown passes with 347 yards in the air. Running back Travis Etienne with 3 touchdowns total. Matt Napolitano, Fox News.
And I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Joe Docomo Pacific is making the Better Together bundle even better. 2 great services plus more. Get unlimited local calls, SMS, and 20 gigs of data, plus unlimited home internet for $109 a month. Sign up today and get free installation and choose between a free Galaxy S8, S8 Plus, or $100 off select devices. Mobile plus online from Docomo Pacific. Better together. Some conditions apply. See store for details.
Here at APL, our core values give the company its heart and soul. Whether it's connecting your business with our global network through our newly enhanced service or investing our efforts into giving back to the community, APL is committed to serving you. We humbly honor the opportunity to find innovative solutions for you and your business. To learn more about our enhanced service, call 588-4651 or visit www.apl.com/Guam for more details.
So no matter what I say after that halftime show, it's going to be kind of anticlimactic. That halftime show is so dramatic and so entertaining. But I'll give it my best shot. Before the halftime show, I was reading a paper called Reorganization Advisory Number 6 from Governor Eddie Calvo, dated October 6, 2011. And then I got to the middle of it, and I'm going to pick up at the middle where the advisory says, this is just the first phase of the process for this agency. That's the Department of Chamorro Affairs. As part of this first phase, there is an immediate elimination of the following positions. 1, Executive Director of the Guam Public Library System. 2, Executive Director of the Hagatna Restoration and Redevelopment Authority. 3, Executive Director of the Guam Council on the Arts and Humanities Agency. And he goes on to say, it is my intention to conduct a streamlining of the government workforce from top down. This is why the first layoff position eliminations are at the highest level of the cultural and learning resources and service programs in this reorganization. As we move forward with further reorganization of other services and programs, this is how the layoff position elimination process will ensue. The President of the Department of Chamorro Affairs will assess the new organization and provide further layoff plans to make his agency more efficient and to assist in reversing the structural imbalance of the general fund. In approving this reorganization, I have also given to the mayors of Molesu, Hagat, Jatnya, and Barragata, and Dedido the use of several satellite libraries to be turned into community learning centers of excellence. This begins the process of decentralizing library management and revamping library services so it meets the demand of our community living in the 21st century. Well, yeah, this is good stuff. It's unfortunate the governor didn't carry it farther, but this is what I'm looking for from the Leon Guerrero administration and their campaign promises. And the Leon Guerrero administration has a tool that wasn't available to Governor Calvo, and that's the government reorganization plan. As you were the government reorganization chapter in Title V that was enacted at the same time that the sales tax legislation was, and it gives the governor great authority to combine agencies, to privatize, etc. Yeah, to do all of those things. And that's what I was expecting to see from new Governor Leanne Guerrero. And I'm going to get to where I think she's already let us down, but I'm going to entertain Daryl Taggarty first. Good afternoon, Daryl.
Good afternoon, Bob. I'm really happy to hear you bring up this reorg number 6. I'm really with you on this. And I had firsthand experience in dealing with reorg number 6 because I was appointed by the governor to head up KTTF, PBS Guam, and it was covered by that executive order. So when I walked in, I had the governor telling me I was appointed and the president of Chamorro Affairs telling me that my position really didn't exist because it had been vacated and it was supposed to be eliminated under the reorg plan. And that I didn't really work, and if I was appointed, I didn't answer to the board, I answered to him. Because it had not been researched thoroughly, and the laws that govern the creation of those agencies and the contracts that those agencies had with federal grantors had not been vetted to find out what the impacts would be. So it took a while, and it was never fully implemented. It's a great idea, and yes, it's a great tool for the executive to provide direction and to reorganize the government for ways that can maximize use of technology and bring similar missions together. But one of the problems we had when rolling forward trying to implement it was that you still needed to have the kind of program direction at the top that was being eliminated by eliminating the top positions in the agencies themselves. And then you had to have the kinds of skills at the top in the president's office at Chamorro Affairs that would be needed to make decisions at places as diverse as CAHA and PBS Guam and the library system. So yes, there may be a person out there who could actually do this, and Joseph Cameron was capable of doing it, but with the number of difficulties and with what was on his plate, he couldn't do it alone, and they never did really bring in a deputy except to bring down Kathy Gogui from PBS Guam to help him run the Department of Chamorro Affairs. So besides the structural reorganization, they really have to run the numbers and look at the missions and the workload of the individual positions that would be eliminated in order to make sense of it. It can be done, but it takes a lot of top flight administrative research and writing.
Two observations here, Daryl.
Mm-hmm.
First observation, I see Governor Calvo swinging that mallet and the puck taking off for the bell, and he got very close, but no cigar, right?
Well, it was going in the right direction, but it needed to have very, very good follow-through, which was anticipated in the document.
Yeah, so that's my first observation. Second observation, there are creatures in the government of Guam bureaucracy called program coordinators, right?
Yes.
And wouldn't perhaps the addition of a program coordinator, 3 or 4, or perhaps 2 at the Department of Chamorro Affairs been able to fill the gaps that you just described?
Yes, but they would have had to create those positions and put them in the budget because those would be classified positions.
Right.
And unless you wanted them unclassified, and then it'd be basically like having deputy directors. And you would also, so you'd have to budget, and then you'd have to tap each of those agencies for funding for Chamorro Affairs, a line agency.
Okay.
But you're right. You're right. If you were to have additional positions created at Chamorro Affairs, that's why it's necessary really to have a good reorg strategy in place. this is just the first step of a strategy. And I walked into it, and I had to start analyzing it on day one and try to fit myself in both into the administration and the intent of the governor and the president of Chamorro Affairs, and to carry out the mission of PBS Guam. And they were not compatible. I tried to connect dots, but there were some dots outside of my reach, and it didn't move forward. There were other priorities for the president of Chamorro Affairs at the time to deal with, and not to keep the reorg going.
Okay, well, I also would make this point, that there is a Chapter 1A in Title V called Reorganization, and it gives the governor of Guam tremendous ability to combine agencies, privatize, et cetera, and do all kinds of things. Now, what our listeners out there in our international radio listening audience should take from what you've told us is that reorganization requires more than a good idea and a willy-nilly implementation. There are details that have to be dealt with in the process of reorganization. But the point that I'm going to make here is that I look at this, and this is what I'm expecting from the Leon Guerrero organization with a proper implementation. I don't think you would disagree with me there, would you, Gerald?
No, actually, I am calling to amplify your point on this.
Good.
Because I'm glad it came out, and I'm glad you're bringing it up, because it is necessary for the governor to make a set direction, and then for the people that he puts into place to carry it out, which necessarily involves going through the budget process, which starts in January, for the proposals that will be sent to the legislature in March, I think it is, and then for them to chew on it all the way up until summer, and by that time it should be easy to articulate what the plan is moving forward through that time period. But the executive order the reorg order is the way to start. And yes, we are looking for those kinds of setting direction and putting it in black and white, and stating that this is the mission not only of the agencies but of the appointees that have just been announced. As they're taking office, these should be their marching orders. This is the way the government's going to work, and how it's going to work within budget and improve services and constrain costs. And so absolutely, thank you so much for bringing up reorg number 6.
Well, thanks for sharing your experience with us, Daryl. Good talking to you.
Yep. Keep up good work, Bob.
So long. So thanks for chiming in there, Daryl. So kind of filling in what I was saying. And what I'm looking for is something like this from the Leon Guerrero administration, taking advantage of Chapter 1A of Title V and bringing about greater efficiency to our government, even if it means eliminating positions. And like the governor says, do it from the top down. That's what I'm looking for. But, of course, the reason I have this reorganization number 6 is because it was part of the news story talking about the resuscitation of the Hagatna Restoration and Development Authority, which was put out of business by that very same reorganization advisory back in 2011. So we have the Leon Guerrero administration coming along saying we're going to realign our finances so that we can take care of our priorities like education. And the ink, as you were, they haven't even been sworn in. This was before the governor was even sworn in. She announces that I'm going to appoint Lancia Casil to this organization that was eliminated in 2011. I'm going to resuscitate it. I'm going to appoint her. And then the director designee of the Bureau of Budget and Management Research, a certain Lester Carlson, says, a reorganization memo. It's not a law. Carlson said the next governor can supersede it. He said he is confident funds will be found to revive the office and pay the staff. Well, how much are we talking about there? You know, just a director, you're talking over $100,000 there, and how many staff members are we talking about to do something that seems like we got along quite well with since October of 2011? At the same time that the or more bill was reintroduced yesterday by Joe San Augustine. Now, the or more bill is the bill that corrects the technical error in a tax bill that would double the real property tax on improvements, that's buildings, on real property worth $1 million. And the theory is that because the statute says $1 million, if your building is worth $1,001, tax doesn't apply. So Joe San Augustine's introducing a bill to add the words or more to that budget law. But he must have borrowed a page from, or maybe they shared, from Jim Moylan's book, because that really won't have any effect until next October because of the timelines for collecting real property tax. So when that bill comes up, some would look at it as, well, it's just a technical correction and it was supposed to have passed in the 34th. Others will look at it and say, no, it's a tax increase, and we don't need no stinking tax increases. And I'm very tempted to be one of those in the second group and go down and say, no, you should not pass this bill so long as we're creating agencies and adding people to the payroll at the Haggadah Redevelopment Authority. We don't need, if we can do that, then we don't need to increase taxes. And then, as I pointed out yesterday, a Democrat legislature, the 34th, did away with deputy director positions. And the new Democrat governor, before she was even sworn in, started naming all of her designees for deputy director positions. The Attorney General then comes along and says, well, the prohibition in the Budget Act was inorganic, so the lieutenant governor, as you were the new governor, can do that. But it's not the question of can she do it, it's the question of should she do it. She's talking about fiscal discipline, etc., and before she's even sworn in, she's costing us more money. So if we're going to be that profligate with taxpayers' money, I think I'm probably going to turn on my nasty letter machine at home and start preparing testimony to testify against the or more bill. Because if we can do these things, then maybe we don't need to increase taxes. And I don't like the policy behind that law anyhow, to double the real property tax if you happen to have a building worth $1 million on that piece of real property. And, of course, Democrats are famous for their ideas of, well, let's soak the rich. We'll charge the rich people higher taxes. That way we don't have to tax our people as much. But as Ray points out on the morning show, the Ray Gibson show, businesses don't pay taxes. Businesses collect taxes from their customers. So if we were to increase taxes on every building worth $1 million or more, then we're increasing taxes down here on Hotel Row. And given the competitiveness of international tourism, I don't think that's a good idea. If anything, we should be looking to cut taxes down on Hotel Row, hoping or with the idea of reducing costs so that we could be more competitive with other overseas destinations. businesses that inhabit buildings for which the value is $1,000 or more are going to wind up paying higher taxes, which they will undoubtedly pass along to their customers. So the whole redevelopment Hagatna Authority revival is not a good idea, and it is not what I expect from the new governor, and not off to a very good start, Leon Guerrero administration. Okay, so let's go from there. Let's see, it's just about time for the seventh inning stretch, right, Real Joe Cruz?
You have about 2 more minutes, sir.
2 more minutes, okay. Well, I guess I could spend 2 more minutes beating up on the Leon Guerrero administration. I don't think I could even do it justice in 2 minutes, but I do have another item on the card that will require our Tall Tales International listening audience to turn to their Law and Order notebooks, because we're going to talk a little bit about law here. And the impetus for this law exposition is a front page story on yesterday's Post. Family hit by drunk cop denied compensation. So if you're going to get hit by a cop when you're out driving around on our highways, try not to get hit by a drunken cop. Yeah.
Or one that's on duty.
Well, better that he be on duty. So I'm going to uncover a couple little-known facts, and this ought to be a good lesson for all of you guys working for the government of Guam who think that government vehicle is really just your personal vehicle that you could use to take your kids to school with, or take your wife out to dinner in, or all of these other things that I see almost on a weekly basis, misuse of government vehicles. And of course, if you were to press, say, a village mayor, the response is, I'm always on duty serving the people. But let me read this article here. The government of Guam has denied a claim filed by a couple whose vehicle was totaled when a drunk, off-duty police officer crashed into their car. Joanna and Gary Hawkins filed a government claim against the Guam Police Department seeking about $12,000 in damages. The couple stated that at 12:05 a.m. on the 4th of July, they were struck by a vehicle driven by an off-duty police officer who ran a red light and then struck their vehicle. I wonder if the officer wrote himself a ticket for running the red light, Real Joe Cruz. Probably not, yeah. The couple's 3 children were inside the car as they were attempting to turn into Marine Corps Drive from Kmart. The impact of the crash resulted in the side airbags being deployed in the vehicle, and the family complained of some aches and injuries. Police officer Dennis Santos, 52, was driving an unmarked official vehicle assigned to the Guam Police Department Criminal Investigation Division and sustained injuries from the crash that required him to be hospitalized. He was arrested and charged with driving under the influence as his blood alcohol level was more than 3 times the legal limit. In August of 2018, Santos was arrested and charged with multiple felony counts of vehicular negligence and driving while impaired with children on board. Santos had been placed on administrative leave with pay pending the criminal administrative investigations at the police department, and then took sick leave for his injuries. GPD spokesman Paul Tapau said details of the disciplinary action taken against Santos cannot be disclosed because it's a personnel issue. Well, I don't go along with that line, but I'm not going to deviate from where we are right now to talk about it. While Santos is back on the job, the Hawkinses have incurred expenses each month since the crash. Okay, here comes that seventh inning stretch. So I'm going to come back to the Hawkinses right after I do the old seventh inning stretch.
Welcome to Subway's ad for the new Chipotle cheesesteak sandwich. How would you like it?
I would like it to predict my future.
My pleasure.
I see. Your future, a delicious moment in the new Chipotle cheesesteak sandwich with steak, jalapeno peppers, and Chipotle Southwest sauce. Wait, I foresee an imminent spell that is going to entice you. It's the crunchy bread with sunflower seeds, which provides an enchanting flavor. Don't miss it, and be mindful, the portal of the Chipotle cheesesteak sandwich is open for a limited time only. Subway, make it what you want.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training every morning on The Ray Gibson Show.
Where does the boss's responsibility end for the performance of your team, and where does yours begin? I'm Jerry Roberts, and at 7:20 a.m. on The Ray Gibson Show, we'll give you the straight scoop on how that should line up.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at GuamTraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services on The Ray Gibson Show on 93.3 The Point.
So now that we're all comfortable out here in the center field bleachers, having done our seventh inning stretch, maybe it's time I welcome back our Facebook guests here, Real Joe Cruz.
Welcome back.
As usual, Brad Hewitt is locked and loaded. Good to see you on the ball there, Brad. And Carl T.C. Gutierrez, Governor, it's always good to see you here on our Facebook page. Ted Lewis is back in Montana, I'll bet, huh, Ted? Jim Adkins says, here we go. And Tom Van Ingen, half a day, Senator, and half a day to you, Tom Van Ingen. Ishmael Velez is here. Juanita Machi, who is one of our staunch regulars. Ishmael Velez has a confession for us. Talking about addiction, I guess that editorial in the Post really got his attention. Tom confesses, I'm addicted to the chemical substance known as the white chocolate mocha. Yeah. That's it. What is that, Schedule 13? Schedule 13? Yeah, anyhow. Nate Horn. They'd get the pretrial release, and then they'd commit a crime again. Seems to be the routine. And Brad Hewitt says this ought to be entertaining. Guam PDN says that Independent Guahan is holding a teach-in on the cockfight ban, and there's a link there. And I think the teach-in is going to be tonight. So once again, like Tall Tales kept me from going to that social justice workshop at the university on Friday, it looks like Tall Tales is going to keep me from going to the teach-in on cockfighting tonight. Well, I will cover it on Tall Tales tomorrow. And maybe what we ought to do is approach the cockfight ban from the standpoint of what constitutes cruelty to animals. And how does cruelty to animals fit into the moral structure of a good person? And we start there, and then we'll take it all the way back to the United States Congress and see how it develops. Are you up for that, Brad? I hope. And Shelley Gibson, hey, Mr. Klitzkie, how's it? Hey, it's going good, Shelley. Here I am conversing with our international radio listening audience on the point, how much better could things be? And Carl Bora Nelson is here. I don't know if he just arrived or if he just got around to signing in. And Jose Martinez replies to Brad Hewitt's post about the cockfight teach-in, saying the activity of a revisionist, meaning that Michael Bavacqua is a historical revisionist, and I would say revisionist at best. We've got Albert Eliasson, half a day, as you were afternoon, Albert, and Semper Fi. Jay Forsyth is here. And Brad says these quote, personnel issues lines is grossly overused. And I agree. You know, the personnel action of a government employee showing his salary is something that can be discovered with a Sunshine Law request. So obviously that part of a person's personnel matters is public. I think that the public has become numbed to this idea of government officials saying, well, that's a personnel matter. And that's the end of the story. Lee Stanley's here. Hello, Lee. And Mo Cotton has been here since 4 p.m. Well, I hope you've been enjoying yourself, Mo. We try to have a really entertaining show every day. And entertaining and informative, I guess that would be the watchwords here. So we're back. We've got a couple more innings to go on Tall Tales for today. And I was talking about the automobile collision that a police officer named Dennis Santos was involved in with a couple named Hawkins. And Santos is back on the job. The Hawkinses have incurred expenses each month since the crash. Gary Hawkins confirmed he and his wife have spent hundreds of dollars on rental cars. Their vehicle was a total loss, and they had hoped to receive damages through the government claims process since Santos had been driving an official government vehicle. But the family will not get a penny from the government. Assistant Attorney General Kenneth Orcutt, actually I think he's a Deputy Attorney General, Kenneth Orcutt, denied the claim on October 4, stating the government is only liable for claims arising from negligent acts of its employees acting for and at the direction of the government. Orcutt noted that Santos was not on duty at the time of the crash. There is no evidence that he was acting for or at the direction of the government at the time of the accident. Well, unfortunately, that is the law. So we unpack it a little bit. We start out with the idea that the government of Guam has what is called sovereign immunity. And a sovereign, which Guam isn't, but it has sovereign immunity, I suppose derivative of the sovereign immunity of the United States through the Organic Act. Sovereign immunity means that there can be no lawsuit against the government asserting sovereign immunity, no matter how liable the government is. So the Organic Act says that the government of Guam has sovereign immunity, but that it may expressly waive its sovereign immunity in certain cases. So the government has waived its sovereign immunity with respect to the negligent torts of its employees, not intentional torts. So if a police officer pulls somebody over and beats that somebody up with his nightstick, sovereign immunity would apply because the waiver is only for the negligent acts of employees. And then, of course, the employee has to be on duty. And we are very sloppy the way we handle our official vehicles here. And it's been going on for a long, long time. And here's something that probably government employees driving these vehicles don't realize. As per this case here, if you are not acting for and on behalf of the government, you have no Claims Act protection when you're driving a government vehicle. So if you're the mayor of Malolo and you're driving your child to school and you are in a car accident and it's your fault, no Claims Act protection for you. And even worse, your own automobile liability policy probably doesn't cover you either. Without going into too many technicalities, if you are driving someone else's car on a temporary basis, probably your own liability policy covers you. Or if you let somebody else drive your car on a temporary basis, same thing. But if you let someone who's living in your house drive your car and you don't show him as a listed insured and pay whatever premium is necessary, he's probably not covered. And if you drive another car all the time and you don't insure it, you're probably not covered. So if you're driving that government vehicle, your own personal policy probably does not cover you. And the Claims Act doesn't cover you either. And horror stories like this Hawkins situation arise in situations like that. So once again, for the Leon Guerrero administration, I would hope that you really crack down on the use of government vehicles. And the fact that you put a little note on the back of it that says 24-hour vehicle really doesn't change things. Or the fact that the person who's driving it has deluded himself into thinking that he's always on duty because he's always serving the people doesn't get him very far either. So that's our Law and Order notebook for today. We'll find out if how often Jack drives an official vehicle. How often do you drive an official vehicle, Jack?
Officially, none of the time.
You're safe.
Sorry, I don't work or have a job with the government of Guam. But I was calling. You mentioned about sovereign immunity when it comes to the government and lawsuits. Can I ask you a question? A while back, I think the Assistant Attorney General, you know, he was riding his bicycle and he went into one of those crates.
Grates, yeah, I remember that. Mm-hmm.
And he won his lawsuit. And I was wondering, what's the difference between these two cases?
Okay, the person that recovered about $100,000 from the governor, from the government, was riding a bicycle on San Vitores Boulevard, and he ran into a grate in the road.
Well, his front tire slipped into the grate because
yes,
you know how the grates are there.
I'm getting there. Okay.
Okay, sorry.
So imagine a grate where the openings in the grate are parallel to the highway, and contrast that with a grate where the openings in the grate are at right angles to the highway. Well, if they're at right angles to the highway and you ride over with a bicycle, your bicycle is going to bump over the grate, right?
True.
But if they're parallel to the highway, then your front tire is going to drop into that grate. It's going to ruin the front wheel of your bicycle, and you're going to go ass over teakettle and probably land on your face in front of the bicycle. And that's what happened to that Assistant Attorney General. So his government claim was that the government had negligently designed that portion of the highway. And as I recall, it was even on notice of the negligent design because there had been other incidents involving that same grate. So it was a clear case of negligence on the part of the government that caused that injury. Thus, the doctrine of sovereign immunity had been waived. With respect to Dennis Santos, no negligence. He is driving a government vehicle outside the course of his employment, so the waiver of sovereign immunity wouldn't come into play.
Okay, yeah. I guess because really, to tell you the truth, those metal grates, if you had a mountain bike, they probably wouldn't fall in. But if you were riding one of those race bikes, they probably would. So that's just out of experience.
You know, it happened to me one time, Jack. Jack.
Yeah.
It happened to me one time. I had the classic, what we used to call English bicycles with the really skinny tires.
Yes.
And I was riding down in a canyon. I went around the loop, and then I was heading up Route, I was heading up Route 4, and there was one of those improperly installed grates there, and I rode right into it.
Yeah, I've ridden into it many times, but
and
if only I knew I could sue. I just took it as a lesson learned.
It did a number on my front wheel, which I don't know, probably cost me $100 to replace. But fortunately, there was no one standing on the corner. Otherwise, the embarrassment damages would have been in the hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Well, yeah, I was just wondering, and if why one case would be considered a sovereign immunity case and the other. And I guess the negligence thing, because it happened to me and it happened to you, why we never thought about it. I don't know. It was just a lesson learned. It was just a bad thing that happened to me, and I learned not to ride over the sewer drains after that. So I guess that's all I had to think about, and to contemplate on what the difference between and how to exercise sovereign immunity when it comes to the government. I remember back we had a discussion of whether or not, and you brought this forward about whether you can sue the Department of Education. Yeah, and you said I think the proper way was to sue the director.
Correct.
Because, yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I remember those things, and I just wanted to know that I may not have graduated from Mr. Klitzkie's or Professor Klitzkie's university, but I do take the online course.
Well, just keep making these notations in your Law and Order notebook, Jack, and you'll be fine.
Yeah. So anyways, have a great day, and we'll listen to you tomorrow.
Thanks a lot, Jack. So here we are, coming up on the home stretch.
Chili's 3 for Me menu just got bigger. We're giving you more choices for the same great price. For just $15, you can get a beverage, salad, and an entree. First, choose from a refreshing Coca-Cola, iced tea, or Heineken on draft. Then enjoy a house salad and select your choice of a mouth-watering entree, like our half-rack ribs, Cajun chicken pasta, old-timer burger, personal chicken fajitas, or the flavorful margarita flatbread. So hurry in today and enjoy our Chili's 3 for Me menu for just $15. Available for a limited time. Chili's, more life happens here.
Insurance doesn't have to be another budget buster. NAMBO Insurance has reasons for you to celebrate this new year. With NAMBO Insurance Bundle Up Plan, you can save big. Bundle up your home, auto, or motorcycle insurance and save up to 50% off. Start off this new year with great savings from NAMBO. Hurry and visit our 2 locations in ITC Building in Tumalin and our new NAMBO Building in Hagåtña. Call us at 477-9754 or visit us at NAMBO.com. From our NAMBO familia to yours, we wish you all a happy new year.
So here we are back at the home stretch on Tall Tales, and I'm going to mic up here right after the playing of the home stretch. Hello, Mike.
Hello?
Hello.
Hey, Bob. My name is Mike. I'm a first-time caller. Just started listening to your show recently. I was wondering if I could ask you, you were talking about the incident there with the officer, and you said you didn't want to go into the whole thing about how they're not the police department won't release to the public about any disciplinary measures they might or might not have taken against their officers. That's just something, it's just bothered me a long time. It never made sense to me. I was wondering if you could touch on that.
Well, I think the police department has a responsibility to tell us who's on duty and who is not on duty. So if an officer has been suspended, I think the police department has a responsibility to say that Officer XYZ is not on duty right now. And then go ahead.
I mean, with the nature of their job, they have a lot of authority, they have a lot of power, and just the nature of their work, I mean, things could go wrong, and they do sometimes, and it's just, I think the public should be able to know if an officer did something wrong, if they've been disciplined and what it is, and when you see these cases and they're like, well, we're just not going to say anything about it. It almost feels like there's no accountability to the public.
Yeah, there is a statutory scheme that says that an individual's personnel file
right
is confidential except for a couple of exceptions, and the definition of personnel file, I think, is strained when you have to stretch it so far as to say we can't announce that so-and-so is no longer with the police department or is on suspension, etc. This, again, would be a fine place for a senator to come in and bring about some salutary changes, because I agree with you 100%. If a cop gets busted for drunken driving, I'm not satisfied with, well, we can't talk about that. Whereas,
there's a case of, police brutality, God forbid it happens. The guy hits someone when he shouldn't have, or arrested someone when he didn't deserve to be arrested. Where does the public get its accountability that, hey, we took care of it, we did this, we're on it? I mean, did they do that in the States? Is that just a Guam thing?
I think it's probably not. I think probably in most mainland jurisdictions there is more disclosure of police discipline than there is here.
Well, I mean, that'd be, nice to follow here.
Well, maybe what we can do, Mike, is get some senator interested in reforming that part of the statute.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
So you're a newcomer to Tall Tales, huh?
Yeah, I didn't even know about the station 93.3, and I would listen to Rush. When I found out he was on, I thought that was cool. And then, as I'm driving home, you come right after, and you kind of have the same talk about similar things, and I sure do enjoy it.
Yeah, well, Rush does the warm-up for my show, so.
Yeah, he sets it up and you knock him down, huh?
Yeah, that's right.
Well, good deal, man.
Well, thanks a lot for calling, Mike, and welcome to Tall Tales Nation.
Yeah, thanks for taking my call, Bob.
You bet. So, yeah, I really think that there's room for, as Mike points out, there's room for some statutory reform here. This, well, it's a personnel matter line, comes too easily to people at the police department. And as I mentioned, I think that's a strained reading of the statute. And personnel actions that indicate how much a police officer is being paid are discoverable. So I think that the police department could do a better job, and I also think that some statutory revision might be in line, maybe not for the whole government, but certainly for anybody who carries a firearm out there in our Second Amendment land. If you carry a firearm, if you're a peace officer, the ability to keep your employment affairs from the public ought to be less than if you are a clerk typist, say, at the library or something like that. That's my 2 cents worth on the subject. So wrapping up this matter here, I did have a question, a Facebook question here. even though his family supposedly can't sue the government, can they file a personal lawsuit against the Santos character? Absolutely, yeah. And I would certainly hope that they did. Of course, you know how that goes. It costs money to file suit. It takes a long time, and but we'll keep an eye on this and see where if anywhere it goes. But Brad, I have to take issue with you. It's not really a BS response from the AG. I think it is the correct response that we wouldn't want to be liable for any tortious conduct on the part of a government employee unless he is acting within the scope of his duty and his misconduct is negligent and not intentional. If it were intentional, you could be throwing the doors of the Treasury open. Now, what this Santos case shows to me, beyond the obvious facts of, of a cop being drunk and running into somebody at midnight, a real failure of supervision at the police department. Because, let's see, somebody here said, where is it here? Aren't these CID officers always on call? That's the excuse for using a 24-hour vehicle for personal purposes. Well, yeah, that's a good point, but it doesn't have to be that way. I remember from my own time with the government of Guam, this idea that a person's on 24-hour call, that doesn't stop him from driving to the motor pool and picking up his motor vehicle unless his car has some kind of equipment that he has to have immediately. And if that's the case, then there have to be strict rules as to the use of that car and when on and when off duty. Police officers are dispatched, so a well-disciplined police department would say that no matter where your car is, you're not on duty until you've been properly dispatched. So just driving down to the corner 7-Eleven to buy a pack of cigarettes or down to McDonald's to buy donuts for your next shift, that doesn't put you on duty. So I see this as a real failure on the part of the chief of police. And if I were speculating, I'm wondering if even maybe the chief of police might not have some vicarious liability, depending on what Santos's record had been like up until the 4th of July. If he'd had other similar run-ins, then perhaps even the chief of police is liable. But to close it out, bad performance on the part of the police department all the way around, and a real misfortune for the Hawkins family. Nobody deserves to have happen to them what happened to them. So we'll keep them in our minds, and if there's any breaking news on this, of course, I'll bring it straight to your attention. We're wrapping up another edition of Tall Tales. Let's hope that we've gotten through the ceremonies and we can get some hard news tomorrow. But no matter what, you can look forward to another entertaining, enlightening day on Tall Tales. See you tomorrow.